Hey there everyone, my name's Sarah and welcome to Novel With Me, the series which takes you on a writing journey from start to finish. There has been a child present in parts of this video, so please ignore the crinkling that you might hear. The child refuses to sleep. Today we're continuing our work on world building, part 2. Last week we focused on the continent on which you are going to build your world. You can click here, I think it's here, it might be there, I think it's there, for last week's video. And today we're going to be delving into the life and culture in your setting. Let's begin. Our 4 points today are culture, religion, government and politics. The difficult stuff. I'm not looking forward to this at all. For this video you're going to have to delve right into your states and countries and kingdoms that you are going to be setting your world into. Now, if you don't 100% have that figured out yet, it's not a massive problem. You can create the culture and create the government and the politics and the religion and assign them to different kingdoms at a later date. Just remember that your culture doesn't just stem from history, it stems from the geographical location as well. Let's start big. Culture. You need to remember that culture is the way of life of the people in your land. It's how they think, it's how they act, it's what they believe. It's their view on the world, their traditions, their values. Culture isn't just about what you see on the surface, it's not that shallow, it has such depth to it. There's the culture you can see, the culture that you experience, and the culture that you probably don't even notice unless you are there for an extremely long time. I'm not going to be able to get into every single aspect of culture in this one video. I don't have that much time, neither do you, but there will be a link down below to a resource, I guess, that will focus on every aspect of culture that you can look at if you really want to get right down into it. Culture isn't as easy as asking yourself a few questions like most aspects of world building is. It's asking you to stop and really think about the type of world that you want your character to live in, because the culture is going to determine how your character acts and thinks. We'll start with the culture that you can see. If you were a foreigner coming to this strange new land, what would you be able to see that tells you about the people that live there? You want to think about the fashion, the celebrations or festivals that they have, the food and drink, the language, their arts and literature. This is where knowing the geographical location of your kingdom comes in handy. Everything I've just said will depend on your climate and your kingdom's position in the world. Take Westeros for example. Now, out of the 7 kingdoms, you don't really see all of them, but the ones you do leave such a mark when it comes to culture. You're able to tell the difference between all of them immediately. The North are very traditional. The man who passes the sentence must swing the sword, and that's something that they've upheld since the North was created. King's Landing, or the Crown Lands, is an eclectic mix of all different sorts of ethnicities and cultures. So they don't really have their own specific culture per se, but the styles and beliefs tend to be inspired and influenced by the royal family in charge at the time. Dawn is a lot more liberal than the other countries or the other kingdoms in Westeros, especially regarding love and sexuality. You can see how their sense of fashion as well changes depending on where in the country they are, which of course is the geographical location. In the north they wear more armour, they wear more coats, furs because it's colder. In Dawn they wear the flowy fabrics because it's a lot warmer. Everything in world building affects everything else. Remember that. With these cultures we mainly see the surface, and perhaps that's all you need to explore in your own novel. And now we come to the culture that's a little bit more difficult to see, the culture you experience, the culture that you learn about. These are things like values and beliefs, body language, facial expressions, work ethics, family dynamics, gender roles, and many, many more. Too many to name. You want to look at things like how do people in your culture greet each other? What's important to them at the core of their culture? Is it tradition, family, progress, or religion? Are manners important or enforced? And if so, by who? Are there any expectations from the rulers of the culture or within the family structure? Are there gender roles that need conforming to, or cultural views on how to raise a child? These can help you determine your character's personality and mannerisms. That's the baby. This builds your character's childhood and how they grew up. They either conform to the culture or they don't. It's also important to remember that within your culture there may be different beliefs and expectations, usually between generations. The older generation, for example, might be a lot more traditional than the younger generation is growing to be. The younger generation might be bringing in different influences from other cultures and sort of creating their own mini culture within the wider scheme of things. Government and politics. These are two different aspects, but at the same time they're also sort of the same aspect. Silly me, who was under the impression with my limited knowledge that they were two completely different things. They're not. But they focus on two different things and can be interpreted in two different ways, and that is what I'm going to discuss with you in this video. There is one big difference between government and politics. Government refers to the people running the country or the kingdom. Politics refers to the process in which the country or kingdom is run. Stop laughing at me! The type of government determines the politics, but the politics determines the people. And I'm going to try and explain, because not only am I going to end up confusing you guys, but I'm going to end up confusing myself as well. First thing you need to ask yourself is, who rules? Arya Stark. Who can come into power? How do they come into power? And what can they do with that power? When you think of government, you need to think of the type of government that you want to have in your kingdom. There's a list. This isn't even the full list either, so, you know. There are two types of monarchy. The absolute monarchy, where the king lays down rules and decides absolutely everything. And the constitutional monarchy, where the king is bound by the laws and constitutions already set in place in the world. Think Queen Cersei, who is only in charge because of the lines of succession. As far as I'm aware, she is an absolute monarchy and can decide to do whatever the hell she wants. Democracy, where the people choose a leader. You could argue that Jon Snow, Targaryen, and Queen Daenerys fall into this category, because although they're both a king and a queen, they weren't given that title through a line of succession. The people chose them to be their leader. A theocracy, where your country is ruled by religion. Damn sparrows. The bureaucracy, which is where your kingdom is ruled by officials who have been employed to enforce the rules and the laws. The magocracy, however you pronounce it, is where the country is ruled by the magic wielders. Plutocracy, where everyone is ruled by the rich. And totalitarian, which is where your country is ruled by the military. You can mix and match the types of government depending on the type of world, the type of setting that you want. Bureaucracy can exist within democracy, for example. The richer your world might be those with magic, or magic might play a heavy part within your religion. Of course, the standard government in fantasy is usually the monarchy, but by applying different forms of government to it, you can create a fresh twist on what is otherwise usually seen as a tired old cliche. Politics, on the other hand, doesn't just concern itself with decisions on the state. You can also find it in education, in religion, in companies, in business. The type of politics I'm going to talk about isn't the process in which the people run the country. It's not the laws and the constitutions or anything like that. It's how they run the country, how they got into power, how they remain in power. I'm talking underhanded deals, blackmail, secret meetings and buying people off. Littlefinger is a great example of someone manoeuvring their way up the ladder of power by using politics. He's very charming, very informed, and is not afraid to betray someone he loves for that little bit of extra power. There was a moment where he basically had all of the powerful people in Westeros eating out of the palm of his hand. He was manipulating everybody. He was manipulating the politics and the government in order to get what he wanted. Varys, on the other hand, deals in secrets, makes him very powerful indeed. People want him on their side because he holds sway over some very powerful people. He affects politics in the same way that Littlefinger does, by using his smarts, by using his charm, by playing his hands under the table. When you think of politics, you need to think of the alliances between your rulers, or attempted alliances. How do they benefit your country or your ruler? How do they make your ruler more powerful? How does a person in charge exercise their power? Do they protect the traditions of the country, or do they advance and change it? How do the rulers exercise their influence over others? Now, you don't really need to delve into politics as part of your plot if it's not going to be a main focus. But it is a fun thing to think about regardless, especially if your character, whether it's a main character or a minor character, holds some position of power within your world. Religion. Now, I've always found religion really difficult to create, mostly because I am not a very religious person myself, if at all. But I'm going to delve into the question asking portion of world building because I find it easier. Is your religion monotheistic or polytheistic? One god or many gods? In Westeros you have the faith of the seven, which actually isn't 7 different gods like the less educated, like myself, are said to believe, but it's actually one god with 7 faces. Much like the many-faced god over in Bravos, who a lot of people say are the same god. But for the purpose of this, we're going to go with the uneducated version, which is there are 7 different gods. And you have the drowned god of the Iron Islands, who is one god. Do the gods hold any real power, or is it just belief? The Lord of Light is said to have real power, even being able to bring people back from the dead. Who leads the religion? Does it have a hierarchy? The High Sparrow is the leader of the faith of the 7, while there are Septons and Silent Sisters and the Faith Militant who act as part of the hierarchy. We don't like any of them, by the way, just so we're on the same page. I know, right? What are the customs and traditions of your religion? The drowned god is said to decide who's going to be the next on the Iron Throne. For the old gods, one of their customs is that wedding ceremonies are performed in front of the heart tree, the weirwood. Are there any non-believers? Are there allowed to be? And are there any opposing forces to your god? The Lord of Light is said to be in eternal war with the Great Other, who is the god of ice and death. We all know who that is. What are their thoughts and opinions on other religions within the world? And are there any true believers, the super religious? It's more likely that there are multiple religions within your world, especially within different cultures and belief. It's also likely that there's going to be a religion that only a few people still follow, or deities who are no longer worshipped. I'm going to stress this in every damn video because it's super important, and I think I've already said it, but I'm going to say it again. Every single aspect of world building will affect another. Your culture will depend on your geographical location. Your religion is going to depend on your culture. Your government and politics will depend on your history. Take all of this into account to make your world seem as logical and fantastical as possible. Also, again, take inspiration from our world if you're stuck on any of the above. Don't copy traditions or customs or anything to the letter, but use them to inspire you to create your own. In the description below is a link to a handy chart about culture, a Just the Basics blog post which references everything I've talked about in today's video, and a writing worksheet you're free to use to jot down all of your ideas. Novel With Me returns next week with World Building Part 3. We're almost done with world building, I promise. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Good thoughts and happy writing!